Welcome to the Symphony of Realities podcast, boldly taking you where no podcast has gone before. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation as you settle into your X, Y, and Z coordinates within time and space. Here are your hosts, Christopher Anatra and Sean Bond.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of our Symphony of Realities podcast, taking you where no podcast has gone before. So we hope you've settled into your X, Y, and Z coordinates within time and space, because we have a very special show for you today. We have Howdie Mickoski with us today, and we're going to have a really fascinating conversation. So before we begin, Sean, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to talk to Howdie.
Hi, I'm Sean Bond of the Psionic League at psionicleague.com, and go into many abilities. And here we're having a wonderful show on how to have a successful death in at least the rabbit hole that this fine young gentleman has gone through, in to how to escape the cave of Pluto, and how to go beyond what are the confines of our ego boundaries and our prison of our mind and the external reality and light and this realm, and how can we be truly free. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much. We're going to talk about Plato's Cave and beyond. So, Howdie, for people that don't know you, because a lot of our subscribers probably, some of them I'm sure have heard of you, but some may not. How would you describe yourself in about a minute or so? If you can do that.
Yes, simple
We'll give you 2
answer,
minutes.
I guess. I was a fairly normal guy. I was growing up, well, semi-normal. I became a stand-up comedian for a lot of years. I was a hockey coach for a lot of years, so lived a
truly free.
semi-normalish kind of life.
That's how to be truly free, comedian.
Yeah. But then I went through, I would call them traumatic experiences. Not that others have gone through way worse than I have, but I had some difficulties. My father stole all my money. I had an ex-girlfriend that got murdered. And in the course of all that, went through a pretty deep depression. In the midst of the depression and wanting to actually kill myself, I came across a video on ancient Egyptian pyramid building. This was around 1997. And in that moment, I realized this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to focus my attention on the ancient world and ancient knowledge. And I spent about 8 years writing that book, Power of Then. I was really lucky to have met and worked with some native medicine men on the reserves in Canada, a Korean monk, some Qigong doctors in China. So I was really, really lucky who I got in this foundation stage of helping me out. But I thought I was pretty smart at that point. And in 2005, I had a death experience where I fell in a river by a waterfall canyon in Canada. That experience sort of threw everything on its head, and I went through 10 years of clarity, confusion, difficulty, illness, revision of everything. It wound up writing a few more books, Falling for Truth, on that experience. I got into, in 2019, writing a book called Exposing the Expositions, looking into the subject of the World's Fairs of the 1800s and the lies around all of that.
Cool.
And then about a year ago, I started wanting to get a book out on Plato's Cave. And as I started going into digging into Plato's Cave and realizing there's lots of information about Plato's Cave, about the Matrix, but there's really no information about leaving the cave, leaving the Matrix. What actually is that? And that's where the new book, Exit the Cave, came from. And here we are.
Awesome. I think that's a really good review. And for those people that are not familiar with Plato's Cave, how would you describe that?
Yeah, so it's an allegory that is supposed to be, and again, we don't know, but it's supposed to be attributed to the Greek philosopher Plato, a story in which he claims Socrates is providing this allegory to his brother Glaucon. And I'll give a brief overview in a second, but the problem for me is when I began working on this book, and I said, yeah, Plato's Cave, I really want to work on this allegory because it touches everything. It's been kind of considered the key allegory for the understanding of the illusionary realm of reality. And if you look into any of the most famous movies of the last 20 years, be they The Matrix, Dark City, Truman Show, Pleasantville, they're all stories retelling of Plato's Cave. But when I first started, and I hadn't looked at it for 20 years. I read it 20 years ago. And when I came back to reread it, I realized, wow, there's all the stuff that Plato is missing is more important than the stuff Plato is saying. So I'll give you an example. The opening of the basic premise of the initial part of Plato's Cave is that the story is that what if there's a group of prisoners who are in a cave. They are placed in this cave and they are in seats in such a way that their heads are kept in place so that they can only see forward. There is a series of fires that are put behind them, and this group of people will move objects or animals or shadow to make shadows on the cave wall from the fire that the prisoners will believe to be are the real objects that are on the wall. They will also project sounds into the cave in which the prisoners will believe is coming from the objects that they see on the cave wall. The point being, I mean, the story will then we can continue on with where this allegory goes. But okay, that's the initial setup. That's the first like bit of the story. But we're missing absolute key elements. Now, it's indicating the prisoners are us, but it's missing what prisoners? Why are they prisoners? Why aren't they in a prisoner of war camp? Why are they in a cave? What kind of cave is it? Is it a natural cave or is it a man-made cave? Who or what are these beings that are putting all of this giant display on, of putting the shadows on the wall? Why do they need to put the shadows on the wall? Why are they spending all this time to try to fool a bunch of prisoners? So right away, it's like, here's all the foundation stuff that would be explaining what our reality is missing, and it's already going into explaining that the reality is some kind of illusion. And the book that's where my book started, at that point of trying to say, okay, if all this is missing, where do we go from here?
Okay, that's a really good rundown. And as you were talking about that, it reminds me too, I believe part of the story is about how a lot of the prisoners didn't want to leave the cave, like had to be dragged, like literally had to be dragged out, or at least the one person in that story.
Yeah, so the next part of the story claims that one person stands up, eventually breaks it. They have these chains, but it seems like the chains are not locked. A person can stand up and begins to get an overview that, hey, they're not in the reality they'd always thought they were. They're in a very different reality. But again, we're not explained, why does the prisoner stand up? How does the prisoner stand up? What was the mechanism even in that? And then, yes, nobody is ever told in the story that they left the cave willingly. The story claims, what if a prisoner was dragged out of the cave into, as they claim it, the sunlight of the outside world? The experience goes on, blinds their eyes. He comes back. Nobody pays attention to the prisoner anymore. But again, there's no explanation of someone leaving the cave willingly and staying out. They've been purposely dragged out and dragged back in. So again, it was such a strange story once I actually began to read it, of like, so there's nothing in this story of then how does the prisoner exit the cave for good? And I had to start asking why. Was this originally a longer story that somehow got chopped up and edited and pieces were taken away because it was saying too much? Or is the story in itself a form of deception? I don't know, but it opened more questions than it actually answered for me rereading it.
Yeah, and it reminds me too of, there was this movie called They Live. And in that movie, they would put, the main character would put the sunglasses on, and then he'd be able to see the truth of what reality was around him. And there was one scene where he was trying to get his best friend to wear the sunglasses. And the friend didn't want to put the sunglasses on. He didn't want to know. So there was like this 10-minute fight scene in the movie because he was resisting and resisting and resisting. And then finally he put the sunglasses on, and finally he was able to say, like, oh my God, this is what reality actually is. So
yeah, when I first watched They Live, at first I thought that fight scene was the dumbest thing I'd ever seen because I didn't fully understand the metaphor of it. It took me another watching until I started to realize, no, the fight scene is brilliant because that's actually the challenge somebody would have in trying to get somebody to see another piece of reality. And it's a good reminder of how much energy people waste trying to wake up their friends, wake up the masses. It's something I've tried to talk about in the book, that we're dealing with an energetic realm, and we're dealing with a realm where we are being, in a sense, harvested for food. Our energy is thus unbelievably valuable to these other beings and to ourself, and we have to really make good decisions in that um, in that. Now, what's interesting about They Live is how that ends. That ends with the main character dying. It's one of the it's also the only movie I can think of that's a wisdom movie like that is Donnie Darko. Donnie Darko is also a movie where the main character dies at the end, and they both granted, Piper isn't laughing when he dies. You know, he's blowing up the tower and destroying the signal for the movie. Donnie Darko is, of course, laughing in his bed as he winds up dying. And there's a clue there, I think. All the other movies that are Plato's Cave have the character kind of leaving the confines and moving into a different confines. They're kind of being like Neo, right? They're leaving one area of the matrix and moving to something else. And that's Neo's mistake. Neo doesn't check. Is the world of Morpheus, Trinity, the Nebuchadnezzar, is that another layer of the matrix, just like the one he was in? He accepted it instantaneously. So we see that a lot in the standard movie. It's like it's not really an ending. It's like another beginning of another story.
Right. And in that Matrix movie too, I think Morpheus said, like, these people are not ready to be unplugged. You know, they're living their 3D lives. So it's the same type of thing. Like when we start to get access to this information, we want to share it with people. But unless someone is ready for it, it's not good for us. It's not good for them. And then when they are ready, they'll find this information. They'll find your information. They'll find the information that myself and others put out.
I guess, but I mean, there is a zeitgeist happening now with this idea of that this realm is a type of soul trap, that this realm is a type of trapping mechanism. And it's been off and on. There's been pieces of it out there. Of course, like you say earlier in our introduction, I had to go back to looking at what the Gnostics had to say, what the Cathars had to say, what very early groups that generally the Church of Rome decided to exterminate had to say about the subject of our reality. And I want to make sure I say this openly right at the beginning for everybody. I don't know exactly what's going to happen when we die. I don't know for sure who or what created this reality. I'm presenting 25 years of research and my own experiences of where I think this is probably leading as a way for people to ask good questions, think about things, to maybe go into areas they don't normally think about. You shouldn't automatically accept anything I say, and you shouldn't reject it either. Take it as a conversation piece for yourself, because the most important thing is, what is your experience and what are you going to find out?
Exactly. Well said. Sean, I saw you taking some notes. What would you like to share at this point?
I enjoy your perspective and reading through it in what's brought up in what does it take for ultimate freedom in leaving this matrix, if any aspect of this in a prison. And as we can observe in all that foundational aspects of it, and people can't really escape here unless they die. And then if they did want to escape, there all this technology that would go into leaving the planet that is being suppressed and held back by the elites from the general public. Limited perception, the ego boundaries that close us in mind control to keep us unconscious. What is truly awakening in the waking path, and all the perspectives of awareness that open up to us as being our freeing of our mind, our emotions to not like influence us, our spirit in its greater nature and power and awareness of itself, and why it's here to begin with through amnesia. And I absolutely agree of the value of our energy of our species, which is this grand experiment that has so much value, a connection with divinity, with the connection with the prime creator of the galaxy, God, and angels and demons and all these ETs combined together, and this melting pot of experience for a chess move of the future. Multiple to find ourselves trapped within this dream instead of being able to perceive multiple dreams, which I've also came into awareness of what can test true freedom, to be able to go anywhere, as well as earn a right to go to all the places that exist, experience as many dreams as possible, astral travel, even to like teleportation, bilocation, levitation. I know with ships, like, make it easy for travel. So in that regard, like light body evolution, having a successful death in many different religions, and what that process takes in the retaining of memory and form, and beyond just attachment in like ghost form to a place of death, or ceasing to exist, as the atheists will believe, and the trans migration of souls, and where did these souls come from before, and why are we here, and what is this cycle that keeps, and the urge to come here in the begin with, is it of sound mind, or in is there a greater purpose for it, and is there a give and take because of the level of grinding your soul has to go through, of getting beaten down, and the challenges of this reality, how to overcome not just this dimension, but to go into others, turn access to multiple places, which I've also, because I have abilities, so I like tune into things. My dad died recently. He went through a bardo experience, like an Egyptian and Tibetan Book of the Dead, to where he had to earn his way up to other realms in order to earn his way to other realms. He had to go through a process of letting go of all the blocks and things he was holding back, that were holding back his consciousness, like negative emotions he was holding on, grudges, fears, shame, guilt, different negative things he has an anchorage to other people and drama and karma, and to earn and learn a lot of abilities that would make him useful to the other places he'd be going. So I feel like there's like a big buildup in what it takes in learning to become and earn ultimate freedom, which is not really any limitations, in my opinion. What do you think of? Because I saw you use the word ultimate freedom, and I thought that was a wonderful concept for people to work towards as a goal that is beyond all distractions.
Ultimate freedom. The problem is that I think people don't really understand what the cave is. They don't understand the matrix. And the problem is it is not just the material realm, it's the etheric realm, it's the astral realm, it's the angel realm, it's the super duper realm, it's anything that is within this manifested creation, visible or invisible, is all part of a giant trapping deception lie. So you can't be conscious, and we're talking about awareness. It's all about awareness. Awareness can't be anywhere within it, or you're still in the trap. You're in one level of the deception. So ultimate freedom is gone from it all. Ultimate freedom, you might say, if we were putting it in Gnostic terms, or terms of the Cathars, their origin story, their creation story is something like there is this totality, there is this they call it a combined father and mother. They call it the father, but they mean father and mother combined as one total absolute thing. And in the course of their generating what they called specific universes or aeons, there was one universe that was turned out to be dead. It turned out to be, there was one, you might say, tree of the trees of existence that turned out to be dead. And in the long story, right, I don't want to go into tremendous detail, but there was an attempted creation by Sophia, one aeon on her own, in the Gnostic story, or in the Cathar story. The evil demiurge type Rex Mundi figure came and stole souls from heaven, one of the two, but used this one sort of dead world to create his own warped attempt at creation without this link to the totality. And that is our realm. And our realm is just a massive, gigantic, huge thing created by this demiurge Rex Mundi character for his own attempted creation. There's two problems, though. One problem was he couldn't make things become alive. He could make the objects in the simulation, and there's a good way to describe it, a simulated AI reality, but he couldn't make them live. So he needed to get help from outside of the realm to make things live. That's kind of us, you might say, the divine sparks, the things that have life force that can create existence here. What's really interesting, and then I'll stop talking and you guys can comment, is that The way I've come to see our realm now, which is devious and sick, but smart at the same time, is that when you consider the possibility how big our universe that we exist in is. I mean, don't just physically, all of these levels, all of the realms from astral to etheric to, it's so huge, and so many worlds, so many parallel realities, so many. Think of the power. If that was a computer, think of the power source you would need to keep that running. It was be ingenious if you could get the characters in the video game to produce the energy that the system needs to keep it running. That in a sense, we've been set up in such a way to power the very simulation that we're in. It's an amazing thing once you kind of get that. And that's why it is so important for what you call this original creator being, who's become known as God in religious traditions, but it's really that name really refers to this demonic creator and the group of underlings in Gnostic terms. They called archons. They have many different names, who sort of run the show and keep things in place here. But it's interesting when you see that all of this is set up to keep the system running by generating power from the things in the system in an unbelievably loop of the Ouroboros, to keep that power going in, out, in, out, in, out, and never leaving. So part of the great challenge is actually we have to disengage from the energy. We have to disengage from the whole energy system, because it's the energy that's holding us here. When someone says it's all the universe is all energy, that's true. This universe is nothing but energy. But when you mention home or ultimate truth or ultimate freedom, that has nothing to do with energy. And so that's one of the hard things, of getting to this point where we eventually wind up splitting between what is divine spark or the true essence of our being, compared to what is the initial piece of us that is connected to this whole giant artificial simulation.
Exactly. And what keeps us locked in there, like the keepers of the matrix, referred to as the archons, and that whole subject. But as you were talking, you were reminding me of the concept of player characters, NPCs, or non-player characters, because I believe from what you've said and from what I've been learning, that it's really the player characters that are giving the power to the matrix. But what's your view on that concept between player characters and non-player characters?
Well, to me, everything is generating the system. So yeah, I think there are, and I just call them fully souled, divine sparked humans. And then there's humans that have souls. I mean, there's no difference. There's absolutely no difference between human A and human B. In the Gnostic terms, they labeled them hilic or somatic, as sort of one without this spark. Then there was, I think it was called psychic, I think, which is one who was beginning to think or had the ability to think. And then there was these divine sparks, which had just deep philosophical questioning ability that the helics don't seem to have. So, but everybody's generating energy. Everybody's generating, energy, and that includes trees and rocks and cats. And most importantly, we forget astro-etheric beings. We only think about the material things we see in this realm. There are millions of beings that are non-physical, that are also part of the system, generating energy, and in many cases getting energy from us. So that's another thing a weird thing we can go into. It's not just the archons in the system which are trying to get energy from us. There are these thought forms that we have created in our, how to say this, that humans have created in our minds. When we think long enough about anything, good or bad, we generate a emotional component in the astral realm. The thing is, if you do that in the physical, it becomes a tulpa, right? I think that's the name in the Mexican tradition. It becomes a thought form created material object. But if it doesn't become created in this realm, it gets created in the astral realm. And now it's a creature that is in a sense alive. It needs energy too. Where's it going to get energy from? The thing that created it, i.e. us. So we've got this bizarre component of all of these little pieces trying to get a little bit of energy from us here, a little bit of energy from us there, and we're not aware of any of it. So we're constantly like moving we're like being led in a constant circle of giving away our energy to something else outside of ourselves all the time. And something similar to what Sean, I think, was mentioning there was, part of that, for at least the divine sparked humans, we have such an unbelievable power, an unbelievable totality, an unbelievable possibility within us. And the whole focus of everything is to get us focused out there. So we're focused on something outside of ourself rather than just what's here, where all the power really is, where all the energy really is. And if you're looking for freedom and to leave the matrix eventually, it's here. It happens right here, not out there.
Yeah, definitely the concept of these, like we'll call them parasitic entities that are out there that feed off of us. Besides everything else that's going on, that's also an issue. Absolutely.
Yeah. Layer upon layer upon layer upon. That's one thing. Once I got into the book in detail, was realizing how many deceptions we're actually under, how many different kinds of deceptions, not just in our material reality, how many things before we're born, how many things after we're born, how many. It is so vast that it really forced me to take a step back and have to re-examine everything I ever thought about everything. And I'm still in the process of trying to put this together, because it is, but it's important. It's like one of the most important things we can do, because if you eventually see through all the deceptions, then there's nothing left to hold you.
Right.
What do you think's behind all distractions and all deceptions?
So what was that again, Sean? I'll get.
What do you think's behind all deceptions and distractions?
What's behind it? Yeah, it's the whole key to keeping us here. There's a great little Star Trek Voyager episode. It's called Coda. And in the episode, the commander Janeway is on some planet dying, and her consciousness has been moved into this other realm, to where she's meeting her father in a white light tunnel, what she believes is her father. And the father's trying to get her to go into the white light tunnel and accept being dead and move on. And within time, as she's resisting this for various reasons, she realized this is not her father. And it's now revealed to be an alien being disguising itself as her father, trying. And now, of course, now that she knows, now he starts pressuring her. Now he goes from being very nice to being very, very pressuring, very demanding. And finally she realizes, oh, you can't force me to go, I have to agree to go.
Right.
And that's one of the big pieces of our understanding, is all of this stuff that we've gone through, all of our trauma, all of our insane, because this is a life of suffering beyond belief for so many people. We agreed to it on one level, not like consciously. We were tricked. So the whole thing is a trick, because you might say the beings here know we actually have more power than they do. And if we were ever operating on an even basis, we would just walk out the door. And the only way they can keep us here is layer upon layer of trick and deception, in a way that we agree. And that's, we can go into karma, we can go into sin, we can go into all of these ideas. They all play into this, where they will bring up particularly guilt, shame, and regret, which will get us to say, I guess you're right. I don't know enough yet. I need to go back and learn more. I need to have these experiences. And we've agreed. We're back in.
Yeah, I think in that episode of Star Trek Voyager 2, I think Janeway actually uses the term archon, if I remember that correctly. I could be
She
mistaken.
might. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
remember the name she uses, but for sure, once she realizes it's obviously not her father, that it's this alien being. There's so much in that episode. Actually, there's tons of
It's a great
clues
one.
in there. Highly recommended.
Yeah, I recommend that too. I love all the soft disclosure in Star Trek and some of those sci-fi series and movies. They're great. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, there's a lot that we could learn from that. And then that gets into the concept of soul contracts. Oh, we'll let you back in, but these are the contracts you have to live by. Do you have any thoughts about soul contracts?
Sure do. That when you
Okay.
bump, like, one of the things we're really lucky to have is near-death experiences that people have shared. We have pre-birth memories that people have, and this is one of the my death experience that I had in 2005. I had another one in 1999, but both of them I was still, in a sense, in the material realm. I wasn't in the normal after death state in mine. Um, Transformative, of course, and seeing through a lot in them, but the ones where people are sharing this information, those are valuable for us to look into. However, we've got the challenge of are they being deceived as well? And I read have a couple chapters in my book about the near death experience, and how much of a how much of a trick is being played on the people when they're having it. But many of the things that are discussed in these is, yes, this idea where they make an agreement, which is called a soul, we're making it called a soul contract, where we are agree to have certain things happen to us for our growth, for our betterment, usually suffering, pain, problems, difficulty. The movie The Adjustment Bureau is really good at presenting this idea of soul contracts. But again, like in every movie, we think at the end of the movie, the main character has gained their freedom, has gone on, have a wonderful thing. What's really happened is they've just moved from one soul contract to another soul contract. They're still not free. They've just shifted from one that was already there on the page. I like to look at it this way, Chris, is that we don't have free will like we think we do. In any moment, we might have 1,000 choices that we can make. Like you and I can't be the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys next week. Just not going to happen. We can do whatever we want
Right.
with as much positive thinking. It's not going to happen. But we do have 1,000 different options that we could walk. And so it looks like we have a lot of choice, but it's also relatively limited, and limited into grooves that have already been made into the record. And so one of the great challenges is seeing, okay, simple level, we're looking for a groove that we might be a little easier for us. Obviously, I like a more peaceful, more calm existence if possible. But there's also that, okay, but how could I get on groove 1001 that hasn't been set out for me? How could I possibly move to a groove that is totally my choice? And that's one of the real great deep questions of the work, and digging into what shamans do and whatever else. Is there ways to really do that?
Gotcha. By the way, for anyone that doesn't know, Sean's feeling a little under the weather. So thank you, Sean, for being here with this special podcast. We appreciate it.
No problem. Wouldn't want to miss it. So I agree with you that people are having this experience. I've also read into it with a few, as the skill sets picked up as mediumship and helping people walk over to the other side and have a successful death, at least in the scheme of what the options are presented. I've also read into times when family friends got caught in a Archon trap and having to get them out. In your opinion, what is a relatively more free or successful or opened up in possibilities grander than what the Archons would want to trap you in initially in death? If one could
At the death point, you mean, like after you've had your death and you're in that realm?
Yeah, you
Okay.
talk about in your book like a game plan, and like what would be the best scenario to have, like if you could set it up presuming that you knew your death was going to happen, like playing that your voice over and over again, like, oh, challenge the Archon grid, do do these things.
Yeah, for me, I think the challenge is once I've come now to see that what is the standard near-death experience, which is white light tunnel, maybe a stairway, feelings of love and joy, dead grandma, Jesus, life review, these kind of things that's the standard experience that are being presented, with the idea of eventually moving you into that white light tunnel, which is the reincarnation cycle. You're coming back here again. So for me, the first step would be, because you can't tell anyone what they should do, right? Everybody's needs to make their own choice. But when you listen to the near-death experience carefully of so many people, then they kind of gloss over it, is that they were pressured, they were pushed, they had to make decisions instantaneously. They had to do what beings told them to do. And I think the first step is, once you come to realize that you are actually in the death moment, take your time. Just don't follow along with anything. Don't do anything anyone wants you to do, because it'll be a very confusing experience at the beginning. So why not take an hour, a day, a week, 50 years? Take your time to look out the area, see what's going on, find out what this experience is like before you personally make the choice you want to make. And if it's you want to reincarnate and you want to come back and you want to come to this realm, great. You know it's your choice. You haven't been pressured into it. So I think that's a key one, is being ready for that. And there's ways that, yeah, there's a guy named William Bullman. I don't agree with the basic principles of what he feels about the death experience, but he did have an interesting piece of information in there, which was, why not have what he called a death action plan set up for the few days or week before you actually die? Which makes complete sense, actually. I mean, this is an experience we're going to have. Likely, very few of us have an opportunity to exit the matrix before you die. I think you can exit the matrix before you die, but that's a ton of work. And that's a very rare thing. I think whole groups of people, maybe the Maya, maybe the Anasazi, if you did it as a group, but generally we're going to die, we're going to go through the death experience. So assuming we don't get hit by a bus and it just happens instantaneously, we kind of start to know we're winding down and we've got a week to go. And his idea was, why don't you put together, what would you like to have in that experience? Where would you like to be? What kind of music would you like to have to play? What are the people you'd like to have to come to visit? He suggested maybe having affirmations to yourself. In this case, trying to keep triggers for when you move into the after death world, that these will be the things that are still on your mind, which in my case might be regain your own power, have your own authority, make your own choice, don't get pressured into anything, know who and what you are, return home. It could be any of these things. I think these are really good ideas to not be hiding away from what is obviously the most transformative moment in our experience, our most amazing potential, right? As Carlos Castaneda would say, our most amazing potential moment, that we go into it with so much fear and so much unpreparation. Why don't we have it set up? I mean, there's no reason where you can say, I know when I'm going to die, I want to see this person, and this person, and I don't want to see them and them and them. It's your experience, it's your transition. Why don't you build it the way you want? And why don't you try to build in, if possible, the affirmations you might say that you're going to want to have when you're awake on the other side, and say, this is now how I want to run my experience in the afterlife.
So is this something you feel like someone should write down? How would someone like go about getting this planned out, besides like spending a lot of time thinking about it? Put it down on paper, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, you put it on paper, you lay it out as how you, the things you'd like to have, and then I think it's important to share it with a person that you trust, because who knows, when it gets time when we have to use it, who knows what kind of state we're going to be in. We might not be able to function too well to go and know what the paper is and explain it to somebody. And so it's good that somebody you trust will know this is what they want, this is how they want this to be, and they can help put it together in case we fully can't. I think the idea of the sounds, though, is important, because I know a number of people have suggested that hearing is the last sense to go before we die. So it makes sense that there's something, whether it's music that we want to hear, or again, some type of affirmation. And I like that it's if you're going to use affirmations, it's your own spoken words. So you've taken your words, you've recorded the very things you want to hear. So it's not just a message, it's your own voice, it's your own message. I think that's an unbelievable power. So to me, it's sort of write it out first, get an idea with it, share it with somebody if this is what you think you're doing, and then make sure, do you have the music CDs that you want? Does the person know who these people are that you want there? Can you start making a record, or at least make a list of things you might want read to you, and I think that's a really good way of preparing. And then it's this idea of, what is your intention? What is your intention with the after death state? Like, are you looking for answers? Are you looking for loved ones? In my case, I'm going home. I'm done with the suffering pit of hell. I'm done with this insane reality completely. I'm not going to be back here at all, zero. And my only focus now is the return home. And so for me, my intention is like an absolute laser, but others don't necessarily have to have my intention. It's your personal intention, but it's good to know, at least whatever it's going to be, that you have that ready. Or as I'm showing in the book, there are so many deceptions waiting. As Sean just said, the Book of the Dead, and both the Tibetan and the Egyptians, they're telling all of the many tricks, layers, deceptions, gatekeepers, weird things you're going to come across, all designed to throw you off course. And so the more you are intended to know what your focus is going to be and what the pathway is you're going to want to walk, is going to give you more options. Another thing I would recommend, I'll just mention this and I'll let Chris and Sean go where you want, but is I mentioned the recapitulation. I think the life recapitulation while we're still alive is also a really important task, but I'm going to let you guys just jump in there.
Okay. Because I have a random question that I forgot to say at the beginning. I wanted to ask you, but just so that everyone knows, you're speaking to us from Norway, and Sean and I are on the East Coast of the US. I've been seeing a lot of really cool Northern Lights photos. Are you in an area from Norway? Are you in an area of Norway where you can see the Northern Lights?
You can kind of see them everywhere. I'm in the middle of the country, so I see them once every few weeks, maybe,
Okay.
is when they come up. You have to go further north, and you'll get them a lot.
Okay.
But and they'll come for like maybe an hour in the night, so you have to be paying attention to when they're there. But yeah, do you have a question on them or?
Oh, I saw one that appeared over Norway. I think it was on December 10th. It was a very unique spiral aurora. It actually made like a beautiful spiral and it was green. So I wasn't sure if that was possibly something that you would have caught.
Is that like, I mean, like the one from about 10 years ago or recent?
This is one that was on December 10th of last year, 2022. So it's
Okay.
recent. Yeah, and if you're thinking about the one like around the time when I think Obama was there or something like that.
Yeah, that one, that was the one I was thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah, some people were saying that was like a SpaceX thing that or something like that. It wasn't an actual
No,
aurora.
it definitely was. It was weird, but
Yeah,
um, no, that obviously I didn't see that aurora that you're talking about. Um, but they're so interesting, and of course, like everything, like you, I've looked into almost every subject imaginable in these 25 years, and that's another one was what are these aurora borealis? What are they? Are they really what they tell us? The light of the sun coming in and reflecting, or so many have suggested that it's the interior sun of the earth, right, projecting through a hole in the North Pole, and we're seeing on like a dome of the sky, we're seeing a reflection of the inner sun on the outside. So actually, we don't even know what they are.
yeah. No, that's very interesting because the Northern Lights are some and the Southern Lights, right? Both are
Yeah.
very fascinating subjects to me. And I think this year too, there have been a number of pink auroras, which means that the energy from wherever it's coming from is coming at a lower altitude to cause the pink colors, because normally they're greens. So,
Yeah, they're almost always, although I've noticed a few people saying they've noticed pink or like a magenta, like a light red or something now,
right.
which is not normal.
Yeah. And I've heard it even said that the Northern Lights and the Southern Lights have to do, especially the Northern Lights have to do with our dreams. And the more intense the auroras become, the more that we're dreaming. So in this dream.
I could see that totally. There's another really good total place to open up, and that is our dreams. And I'll ask both of you guys this question. I tend to ask this when the topic of dreams come up, but because I've had parallel reality experiences in my waking life, but there's so many times I've gone to sleep. I have a dream of an actual experience. I get up and I think, oh, I've just had a dream about that thing that happened 10 years ago or whatever. And then I start going on my day and but wait a minute, that didn't happen. That didn't actually happen, but nobody did. And I have this battle with myself was, is this just a really vivid memory of my dream, or did that really happen? But I can't track it when it would happen. And I've checked with a couple of these. I phoned people that I know and they don't know what I'm talking about. And I'm wondering if while we're in these dream worlds, we're crossing over into parallel realities and we are actually getting experiences of our other selves.
Yes.
And that's why they feel like total experiences, but we can't remember having them. Have you guys had that yourself?
Yeah, actually, I'll let Sean continue next, but I just want to mention a dream that I recently had last week that for me represented a timeline split, because there's the whole concept of what's deja vu and are there multiple versions of us, like that movie Moon Knight, MK Ultra, like fractured personalities, that whole type of a concept. But yeah, so I had this dream that it was from a timeline split that I had, and the dream happened when I was younger, like in the 90s. And what happened was, just to tell it real quick, is there was a friend of the family, actually my family, one of my family's friends, they were like singers, they were opera singers and so forth. And the mother of the family, there was a gathering over at her house. And this is what I remember in real life. But in the gathering, she was going around asking everybody to sing a verse from a song because she wanted to see if just randomly there was someone there that had singing potential. So in this timeline, she got to me and I sang, and they're like, "No, Chris, you don't have potential." But in the dream that I had, I sang wonderfully. And then the dream showed me that I was going on tour. I was doing singing. I was flying to Japan. The daughter of the mother, who like at that time I had a crush with, all of a sudden she really liked me because I was like a singer like the rest of her family. But in this timeline, she stopped liking me after she could tell that I couldn't sing that well. So to me, it was representing a timeline split. So could there be another timeline of myself where I sing instead of write computer software like I do now? So yeah, I believe it was a clue to something that happened in the past, like alerting me to that. Yeah. So, yeah. And then Sean, what's your opinion about dreams and all deja vu and et cetera, et cetera?
I have a lot of dreams of other realities, other timelines, realms, past lives, ones that are similar to this one and slightly different reality rules and things going on, some with different abilities, and they last for months in one night. So yeah, these exist, and this is part of the greater freedom expansion in the multidimensionality of, of human becoming multidimensional and in their divinity path, or coming to different realms or planets. And the whole purpose, besides a planet being a prison, being a school to teach the beings that decide to come there what the experience is good at, what the planet's good at, what it needs, and help that's willing to trade for the people that it has hired or incarnated or immigrated to it with things they're good at to help support it with what it needs and in the opportunities of creation. But yeah, I agree with prison like crazy. And I also had like prison within prison, kind of matrix within matrix, simulation within simulation experience back in my later teens, to where I was in a prison in my mind for a while. That was crazy. And it has strengthened my resolve to both have an aspect of my mind that's constant in escape. I need to escape this place. And then another aspect of, based on how long I've been in prison, in order to keep my sanity, to be okay and accepting of where I am, no matter where I am, no matter hell, to where what hell I'm in, to which I can carry my light of divinity and heaven, or carrying it and dancing around drama of hell, no matter where I am. So I am never truly imprisoned, no matter what prison I'm actually in. And there's layers of it. With this, it's quite the hefty number of what suppresses a person to keep them as a battery. And I agree, and I love you giving the list of what people should do for preparing for death and in the death process as they find. I also agree, and would add to that list. And besides taking your time, because they do want to have the agenda to get you back into reincarnation with low information and low gain, you can test things, and it's you can have fun with it even if you're in a hellish situation. It's like, might as well have an optimistic. But yeah, have more of your soul, like the things I'd ask like during death, to like make it so that you're freeing yourself of any confines and testing the boundaries of things. Of course there's more, like see what you can do, but make sure more of your soul family that's dead is actually surrounding you, so you can get multiple perspectives, challenge them in any deception, like interviewing tactics, to see if they're truly who they say they are, what is and always have skepticism, because like what's the level of omniscience these archons have stolen, and with dark forces, I find this like ask needing you permission thing is part of natural law, which means it's part of the greater law of the universe, which means they're operating under bigger consciousnesses frames, like the sources. So there's outer things to escape to, and what is that we're looking towards, and to open ourselves up to that awareness is the role that takes. Past life perception, besides just a life review in the life you just lived, I'd ask for all your past lives so you can get a greater perception on why you even came here to begin with, and what's the goal, and what was your awareness before you even came here. And I'd love to ask for that. Of course, there's ways to deceive on that, and false light beings usually steal. I've found they have like a core of darkness and intention that you can interview and like peruse to at their core, and they usually stole a bunch of light from other beings that they didn't earn, because dark doesn't earn their abilities through their negative actions. Then they surround themselves with that light to make them look good. So that's ways to look to see if they're false light beings and they're deceiving you and looking like your relatives and all that. All the reason, so gain all the awareness of why you even came here, earning more capabilities to go other places, which can be earned while in death as well as before death. People can earn through pious actions and doing good here, and making peace agreements, and get beings to like you. You can earn more places that you can go after death, and with that gain more perspective, purposes for and then other reasons that like things are trapping, and the excuses to why you can't go there, and who else is trapped here, because they also use that as a reason for why am I here to begin with. Purposes, becoming a creator god that of the earth capacity, some of your family stuck here. There's all these reasons they'll give you, and some of those will be fairly good, especially if you're like here to free things that are affecting the entire universe. But like that also is a subjective, because a lot of people have different perspectives of what is the reality outside the matrix. Once you escape the matrix, what is there? So I'd love to ask you on your perspective on what is beyond the matrix.
That's it.
Yeah. So yeah, Sean wants to know what your thought is about what is beyond the matrix. Once we escape,
home.
what's there? Home.
That's
What
it.
is home to you?
You would only know it once you're having you would, and it wouldn't be an experience. It would be what mystics allude to, but they also get tricked into. They talk of like being in a state of oneness or being in a state of absolute. The problem is you can't be experiencing that while still in a material form. What they're experiencing is the matrix version copy of it. So they're getting an idea, a little taste of what the true absolute is, but you wouldn't know it until you're actually out of the matrix, and there would be no experience of it, because there would be no two. It would be total one, and in total oneness you can't have an experience, because an experience needs an experiencer. So it's beyond what we could even comprehend, but it would be home. Now, again, that's another trick that gets played in the near-death experience, where generally many near-death experiences will say, I feel like I'm home now. They don't want to come back here. I feel like I'm home. And again, we're back to playing this very strange. When we begin to see that this realm, at least the way these ancients describe it, is a copy. So our entire simulation is a copy of a different world. And when we recognize that, that means everything within it is a copy of this other place. So it's so challenging, because we think we've reached a total state, or we think we've reached a completeness, and it seems that way based on the material experience, but it's still not the totality we're still playing in the realm of the copy. So I'm sorry I can't put that into better words at this point, but it's just it's something that it would be a sense of, yeah, being home. I can't describe it any other way.
Yes, I've heard some people say like returning to source or feeling that true love and oneness again, with whatever. But yeah, it would be different for wherever
Yeah.
home is for you, right?
Right.
I wanted to talk about something else, but Sean, is there something you wanted to say before I go on? Go ahead.
So like, thank you for clearing on that. It's like not many people here have the perspective of what is external. So we're bringing the pieces of puzzle together and seeing what we can determine. So it's what I've heard of, like merging back with source. And then there's like my perspective of all the options you could do.
Right.
That I've heard of too is like, okay, you leave here, like what are all the cages? Oh, not being able to just leave this realm, experience all the other realms, dream wherever you want, have full memory of it, not much limitation, be able to escape this planet, go into other higher dimensions that you've been a part of, the tracking back your stream of light and what
Again,
it's
but you have to
traveled
remember,
through.
for me, Sean, everything you're saying right there, that's in the Matrix. That's all in Plato's
Right,
Cave. It's
right. So
just a different
that's
layer of
why
it's just a different
I was
layer of Plato's
wondering.
Cave, and it's Plato's Cave is endless. There are endless possibilities. For me, though, home means all of it's gone. You
Right.
have, as long as any of them have got your attention, you're in the trap. That's what's so difficult, I think, for us to deal with what this even possibly means. It's to let go of every possibility our minds can even, or even our totality can comprehend, and recognize that's not it either. It's so challenging.
Okay. Yeah, and to conceptualize, I was just like listing the possibilities of what it could be like, even close. Yeah, and I agree.
Yeah.
So then it would be like, oh, what is outside the matrix? What's not in the game? What is not a game? In definition is really hard to define. So like, what's our ability to define everything outside of a non-natural matrix? What is underneath the added on parasitic needing to drain matrix? If anything inorganic would still continue to exist if we somehow all decided, hey, let's all become sovereign and detach ourselves from this. Let's keep ourselves from fueling the parasite. Let's drain off and have an ego death to this parasitic aspect of the matrix. And then what will remain after that disintegrates?
Zero. The simulation would just end. There would be no power for it to keep going. It would be like throwing just unplugging the computer from the source, and eventually there'll be a battery that'll keep the computer going for a while, but if you can't replug it in, that's it. It just can't be turned on.
So
And that's
then what
exactly what this would be. Yeah.
so then would we
And
just
I,
wake
I
up
I
like
think
from base reality?
that's in the process of happening right now. We're actually in the shutdown process. Long story without going into detail, and the archons are doing their best to keep it running. That we are actually in a bizarre, that's part of what the Great Reset is all about. It has nothing to do with government, it has nothing to do with new commerce systems. It has to do with a giant restructuring of energy, which is designed to make sure the simulation keeps running and keeps getting powered and doesn't get shut down. Because if it gets shut down, divine sparks leave. Divine sparks are no longer imprisoned. There's nothing here that can keep a divine spark in the matrix. All the material things that are not divine spark will just disintegrate with the simulation, which is why for them, keeping the simulation running means keeping their existence running. So I think if we begin to see things on such a different level, and that the material world aspect is a tiny piece of what's really going on, we might have a better understanding of what we're dealing with and how we each individually want to interact with the experience in our world right now.
Right. And what does it look like in perception of base reality underneath everything, for divine sparks in what they've experienced before entering the matrix, the before and after the creation of it, and what's the natural state of reality, of divine or a fractal hologram of existence, that's
Yeah.
natural.
There's the question. There's a kind of sense. There's the question, right? That I think on one level we feel it out, we intuit it. There's something in us that knows what it is, but there's no way we can present it because we have dropped so deep into matter. We're so deep into in like the bottom of the black hole that we literally have to jump up so many pieces to even be able to re-access. It's like that's like 10 layers up, and we need to get up like 5 layers first before we can even start re-accessing that part. So it's almost like I think we have to work in like steps, and we have to go backwards in like pieces and kind of move to here, move to here, move to here, move to here. And each time we move a step closer, we're going to get more of the totality and leave another chunk of that holding pattern behind, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like the description of out of descension, ascension. And I don't like to agree or attach to any particular definition of ascension, because I don't think it's well represented, but I like to, like, everyone's defining it differently. But yeah, like escaping the descent into 3D physical matter, and being locked into this form, like that, the whole dissension manifesting frequency versus the freedom expanding, that kind of spiral going outward.
Yeah.
It's high with, I think you could come up in a hypothesis for a state of enlightenment that could be like either in as an individual state, or what we need as a collective to drain the parasite of its continued existence, or at least for an individual to escape. That could be tested pretty, and that would be a nice avenue.
I just wanted to comment something too that Howdy was talking about regarding things like shutting down, because the year 2020, 2021, 2022, those 3 years have been quite like bizarre. And one of the things I talk about is how we're entering something called the age of truth, where basically mind control, whatever they've been doing to like keep the masses, in their sleep mode, it seems like that machinery is breaking down, and like truth is starting to come out, whether they like the old ways for them to hide all this baloney about whether it's wars or this or that, big pharma, whatever, like all that stuff is starting to like come out into the public, and people are starting to like almost awaken, even if they don't want to, because the information is starting to hit them. So yeah, so what do you think about that, Howdy?
Well, it is and it isn't. Again, it's pieces of how the material realm has been structured are starting to come out, and some people are starting to figure that out, which is a good step. That's a step to totality. The question is, how much time does everybody really have? Because they know what's coming. They, in a sense, not they as in they're planning it, right? It's coming from many layers above them and filtering down, and they're just the minions too of the whole program that's being played out. But they've got an idea of where this is headed. We kind of don't, and we're having to navigate insanity on a daily basis. They're, in a sense, presenting the insanity, and they know the door that they want to move humans to. And I would metaphorically say it this way: they're just trying to put as many humans through the door as possible. So even though somebody might gain a whole bunch of knowledge now, if you go through the door, it doesn't matter. You've gone through the door. We need to, in a sense, go the opposite of the door. And I think that's the great gift of this time, is that this wouldn't be happening now if it weren't that a giant opportunity for souls to leave is available at this exact moment. This is like a great opportunity if we want to take it, but you've got to take it all the way. You can't just do a little bit. Now is the time. It's like if you're a gambler, you're all in now. You've got to put all your chips in the table right now on this run of the game, because there's no guarantee that going through the door you'll get the same opportunities. But to me, the opportunity is at its greatest. So no matter how insane, and it's going to get more insane, more difficult, more challenging, keep remembering there's an opportunity here that maybe hasn't existed for thousands of years. So take it. Go ahead and see how far you can go. Take it.
Yeah, and with all the energies coming onto the planet, whether it's a Schumann resonance and how that the planet's actually vibrating, and the sun and whatever energies, it's like helping the whole process for a lot of people. One of the things too, I know we're probably running a little bit of short of time, but I have a whole list of things I want to talk to you about. One of the things I just want to make sure I talk to you about is the concept of amnesia when we're born, and past lives, and the Akashic records, and how all that fits in. And I know from your book, you've got some viewpoints about that. Would you mind sharing about how you feel about the whole amnesia process when we're born and we forget everything?
Yeah, for me, that is one of the most telling signs to me that we are in a trap and not in a place of learning or growth or our betterment in any way. Because if you're actually in a school, if you're learning something, memory is a key important part of that process. When we go into grade 5, we don't forget grades 1 to 4. We don't forget how to add and subtract. We can start moving to multiplication and division. And so if you figure, if this is a place where you're supposed to learn, because this is how it's presented, right? A loving creator has created this world for our benefit, where we can learn and grow, and we're given challenges so that we can overcome certain things and move on to the next level. But if you have to keep going over the same experience every single life, even though you learn it and do it correctly, that's not growth, that's insanity. And I compare it to the robots on the TV show Westworld. When they get, killed, whatever happens to robots, they get sent back to mission control, they get cleaned up, they get fixed up, and then they get the memory wipe. And then they get sent back into Westworld so that they can be raped and killed and tortured again. And really, the story of Westworld is the story of Maeve and Dolores, who start to remember all of the previous incarnations they've had, all the awful things that have happened to them, and making the decision, I'm done with this place. I'm finding out what's on the other side and who wants to go with me. And I feel that's a really important part of our process, because a realm of suffering, a realm of what Robert Monroe called loosh harvesting, right? Energy harvesting. Of it can't happen if we remembered the last 1,000 lives we've had and seen. Not every of the 1,000 lives will be horrific, right? Well, maybe at 3 or 4 there aren't too bad, but you have the other 996. If we had all of that memory, we'd be like, I'm done with this. This is just stupid. Never mind how insane the last 3 years have been. If we could see all of it, goodbye. So to me, the memory wipe is a key part of keeping this whole process running. And you find that in every ancient tradition, whether it's the Hermetics, the alchemists, the Greeks, everyone has their cup of forgetfulness, you might say, and that they talk about one of the big steps of our work here is just simply remembering. It's remembering. The more we remember about our incarnations, our experiences, what happened before, after we dead, and more importantly, the more we can remember what's on the outside of the matrix, the more likelihood. Because I get the sense that Sean brought a question up, but I didn't really have the right answer for him. But I get the sense more like this way: if we act like a magnet, that what's outside the matrix is here, and we're inside the matrix, and we try to become like an exact magnetic match to it, we would just magnetically get pulled together. And a lot of what we do is turning us into a different magnet. So we're constantly rejecting what's outside the matrix, because that's how this place is set up, to keep us focused external, keep us preying on something outside of ourselves, to be prey, keep praying outside of ourselves, keep focused outside of ourselves, keep asking for something outside of ourselves, rather than let's just pray to ourselves. Let's just learn to allow the incredible power within. Let's work with that and let everything else do what it wants to do. So I get the sense that it's all pieces of the puzzle. And hopefully for anyone who does think this could be interesting and goes through some of my book, can see how I've it's different when I can write it than when I have to say it.
Exactly.
And maybe it would make more sense when you read some of these ideas, and then you can get a better grip of what I'm trying to present. I'm doing the best I can through just speaking words with all of you today, but it's not the same as when you've written it on paper and you've had time to craft the language.
That's
Right.
what that's what I was thinking with the greater awareness of what can we do to free ourselves, gaining past life awareness of who you are and getting past that fucking amnesia barrier trap. It's the big thing, because this is just my opinion, so take it with a grain of salt, because it's just what I read into. So what I can do with the senses I have at my fingertips. The reincarnation, for as opposed to incarnation of like where you forget instead of you remember other lives, I don't see that on every place, plane, and planet. That usually exists where the domination control systems have set themselves up. So I see it as like a larger multidimensional predator set up to enslave a species. There it could be like some like variance, but mostly I see it negative. So I also don't read it was originally like set up, like this earth was not set up to just be a dominating place. I see it like the dark
Right.
forces took it over. So then it's like, oh, is there like a challenge with like really powerful spirits to taking back planets that have been taken over by the dark, and like the risk that associated with, oh, I could get trapped here while trying to free it, and then people that get up, start getting reincarnated through that after some death process. And what does it take to get out of that and remember the great awakening as opposed to the great forgetting, and the piece by piece of within. And I don't see these matrices as all like the grandest. They can do anything. They steal energy from things. They did not earn this. They stole it from us. So like if we're in unity and we all decided to pull that rug of energy out from under it, it would start depleting itself. And that was really cool what you said about the copy of another place, because I feel like I've heard that before in many some other, I forget where though. And part of us not being in the matrix, like that, like I that like made me think, oh, you could like what you just said, where you could like sync up with that part of you somehow. I also found out with dealing with matrix tech, there's this big overall one that we're dealing with on the planet that I see as like multiple layers of that technology. The original matrix tech is like barely 1% of beings is allowed to make, so most of the dark forces stole it. Again, like this is me tuning into it, so feel free to take it with a grain of salt. There is always a way out made with it. Otherwise, it'd be super dumb for the creator of the Matrix if he ended up in it himself and no way out. So they usually make some way out, like the people that make jail cells. There's usually like a secret they know about it. It usually is behind the last place you want to look, and there's also a way to get out through going within, through your source connection of divinity to the part of yourself that's beyond and outside the matrix, and in the connection with everything, you are ultimately the matrix, and you can you can find that branch of like that tree of light of source of divinity that branches out and becomes all. You can go back to where you branch off from what became the prison that would ultimately surround you, and what that went through, and going back between that. So every one of these matrices isn't like infinite power. They're like a puzzle, and there is ways to solve it. It's just people have that big swinging dick syndrome when they come to this realm and they think they can solve it, and a lot of them end up getting trapped. And it's like it's a really hard one that we can tell, since nobody's really solved it in to present and onward. So what do you think it takes in your next steps in branching out to get beyond this puzzle?
It's just about, it's looking in places you don't normally look. That's a big step. If you keep looking where you always look, you'll always get the same thing. So it's good to look in areas you don't normally look into. Read people you don't normally read. Even if you disagree with them, read them anyway, just to see if something comes from that is a surprising, wait a minute, that's really useful. So it's don't limit where you look into things. Don't limit where you research.
By the way, too, I know we'll be wrapping up soon, but I wanted to mention something about the Akashic records, because one of the things that I do and Sean does, the Akashic records that we have, we hold that within our DNA. And if you can read DNA, you can look into people's past lives and see, certain types of things. And I noticed behind you, you have a statue of Thoth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm feeling you have a connection with him for sure. And in your book, you mentioned something about a German officer. And so that was you put that right out there. So I checked for something for myself, and I knew you in both Germany and actually Switzerland in the 30s. And that's something that is very interesting as well. So, and I believe that we were actually friends for a time period. So
yeah, there you go. Oh, welcome back.
Yeah, exactly. It's been a while. But yeah, and that we would have very interesting conversations and debates and things like that with those types of things. But we were on a similar page for something else that was going on in the world at that time. But that's a subject for another show. So I have a list of more things to talk about, but Cathars,
I have a past life with him that's
tunnels,
hard to explain.
I'm sorry, say that, Sean.
My past life with him is more ET based. It's like figuring out how to bust the matrix of Orion, and it's so this is probably not the only matrix you've just been involved in busting.
Yeah, exactly. Some of us here are here to help do that, actually break down the matrix. So I want to thank you for all the work you've done, Howdy, and the work you continue to do. I know we were going to talk about Mandela effects. One of the things I mentioned to you before is that your name, for me personally, Mickoski, is a Mandela effect, because for me, it just recently changed. It always had a W inside of it. Now, I know in this timeline, it's always been spelled the way it is without the W. And, I understand that and appreciate that. That's kind of how the timelines work. So I'm now in your timeline of the way you spell your name. But for me, it was like very, very specific. I always remember the W inside of it.
Yeah, one of the challenges again is because that was something people, for some reason, that's how people seem to think it's always said. And I never correct people when they introduce me. And so I just allow it to be. And I think so it gets easier to, but I have family line that were like professional athletes, and that name has been in the pro record book for a long time. And just if you ask anybody who's like a hockey guy would know that name from the 1950s. So
Exactly.
My guess is in this case, even though I'm a big Mandela effect guy myself as well,
you are.
My guess is this is my own fault of allowing, just not constantly saying, no, the name isn't like that. The name isn't like that. And I might have altered a few memories down the road, but
okay.
So be it.
So how do you properly pronounce your last name?
Mickoski.
Mickoski. Thank you.
Yeah.
So maybe real quick in conclusion, what do you think about the Mandela effect?
Well, I studied it for a while as well. I found it very, very intriguing. What I found, without going into much detail, what I found intriguing was it, to me, doesn't seem to be random. If it was random, there would be so many little pieces like that. Like in the world of sports, there should be like all of a sudden Mickey Mantle didn't hit 56 home runs in 1956. He hit 54. It'd be like there'd be a change that a sports geek would instantly recognize. None of those happen, and it's almost like they're within a line of a movie here, a line of a song there. They're like little tiny pieces, and I'm not saying who or what is behind the change, but it seems conscious to me. And it also seems like there are also things that you could logically think about. I give a perfect example of the one from, is it Moonraker, where the girl doesn't have
Oh
the
yeah,
braces anymore?
Dolly
Yeah,
and Jaws. Yeah,
yeah. It's obvious that that's how the scene would have to be in order for it to make any sort of sense, just from the standpoint of plot.
exactly.
And then if you go and look at how that scene is played out in various comedy sketches and whatever, however, the girl will always have some kind of braces.
Right.
So it's interesting also that Mandela effects change a source, but they seem to, at least this point, don't change the links to the source. So if you can find links that are not the actual source, you can actually find still often the original piece. So it indicates for me, it's so it's like some sort of conscious choice of A over B. It's limited to certain things, and it's limited to things that are noticed but not necessarily noticed, but you could logically work out what should have been the original.
Yeah, exactly. And when it comes, like, reading into the hidden meanings of them is something that I like to do. And for that one particularly with Dolly and Jaws, teeth, okay, teeth are literally time crystals. Every time a fluid or whatever passes over your teeth are recording that. So one of the
Yep.
things reading into that is that because Dolly's not wearing braces anymore, are we in a better timeline? For example, is time getting better? Are we in a better frequency timeline? But you're right. The whole thing about her not wearing braces just changes the whole subject of the whole movie. Like, it doesn't make any sense
Right.
anymore. Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So taking it to the
Yeah.
next level.
So that's when I looked into it. Those are the ones I most looked to. Is what are the ones that had an obvious things should be this way logically, and then it's like, again, if it's random, there should be way more stuff going on that are obvious to the majority of the population. So it's at a level that's kind of under the radar still, which indicates to me something, probably AI in some way, choosing choosing the choice. And
Yeah, and exactly. And sometimes it's the frequency of words, right? Because words have a frequency. So if you're a Star Wars geek, you always remember Darth Vader saying, "Luke, I'm your father." In this timeline, he says, "No, I'm your father." But no could be
right.
N-O, or it could be K-N-O-W. So there's like, it's the same spoken word, but it's a different meaning depending on how it's put.
Also means,
And actually, in a
yeah.
couple of weeks, I'm going to release like a video where I get into more detail about that whole Star Wars Mandela effect and really going down the rabbit hole with that, and that going into
Cool.
actually the Anunnaki, Anakin Skywalker, Anunnaki Skywalker. But I get into the whole, the Skywalker gods called the Anunnaki and blah, blah, blah. It's going to be really fascinating for a lot of people. But yeah, I love looking into Mandela effects. So
Yeah.
Sean, in conclusion, is there anything you want to ask Howdy or mention?
I mean, there's a lot we can talk about,
I
but
know there's so much, right? There's so much.
Yeah, I really appreciate his work. Keep doing the great work in this journey of life to expel the illusions of the Maya that surrounds us to what is absolute freedom, and how do we gain that, and don't let anyone stop you, don't let the matrix stop you, and let us know if we can be of any assistance in your journey, or starts attacking you. I'm great at helping against that. I had many archons attack me. They're not as powerful as they present themselves to be. They are, you find like the art of war in their sources of energy, and then you start draining them, as well as back to how they found out about you. You can bring it to an end, at least temporarily, and as you grow in your capability to be what you once were, and
Cool.
free this place from what it strifes and challenges that faces unnecessary suffering. Of course, suffering is sometimes necessary, but like you, I love what you went into with. It's not the amnesia thing. Not everything in this planet is a school. It would be insanity if it was.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Howdy, if someone wants to find out more about your work, we'll put links below, but just verbally tell us the best way to find you and get your books.
Yeah, for now, I've still got the terribly named website, Egyptian-wisdom-revealed.com. I'll be changing that at some point, but
Okay.
soon. The information about the books and some sample chapters are there. You could see the books, for example, on just by finding my page on Amazon. Not that you have to buy the books from there, but it's a place at least you can see all the 4 books that I have out. And my YouTube channel still running is Howdy Mickoski Talks, and a wide range of subjects you can go into from there. And that's a starting point. And of course, I also, so people know, because this is a challenging time. People are under challenge, and buying a book and paying for the shipping, a print book can be very difficult, that's why I have a PDF version as well on my website. You can go there. It's I think it's $6 or something. So you can still get a version of the book cheaply if you don't feel you need the hardcover and this is something you want to read. I wanted to make sure this is available to anybody who wants it, because something in me says, we're getting close to a really huge change now, a really huge transformation, a really huge challenge, and every little bit of information. This is something I'm going to share with people that has nothing to do with me personally, but if there's a book you think that's important to you, if there's some internet writings that you don't have stored yet that you think are important, do that now. There's no guarantee how long the internet will be available, how long you'll have access to various types of information. Maybe we will, that's great, but we don't know for sure. So if you think something's important, make sure you have it, make sure you have access to it whenever you want, have it printed off in your house somewhere, then guaranteed, no matter what the circumstances, you've got the access of the knowledge that you feel you need.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And
Yeah.
I want to thank the audience for watching all the way to the end. We appreciate you, and we look forward to having our next Symphony of Realities episode. So again, Howdy, thank you very much.